The Outcast's arrival. The battered transport vessel groaned as it docked with Nexus Command, humanity's last major defensive station before the core worlds. Captain Sarah Chen stepped onto the dock, her reputation preceding her like a shadow. She was the pilot who had survived the massacre at Kepler-7, the one who had done the impossible by escaping a complete Kriegan encirclement. Now she was here to lead humanity's most desperate gambit. Admiral Marcus Thorne waited in the briefing room, his weathered face showing the strain of 3 years of continuous losses. The holographic displays around him painted a grim picture. Red markers showed Kriegan positions advancing through human space like a spreading infection. "Captain Chin," Thorne said without ceremony as she entered, "your unconventional tactics at Kepler-7 caught our attention. We're out of options, and you're our last hope." Sarah studied the battle displays. The Kriegan ships moved with mechanical precision, their formations perfect, their attacks calculated to the microsecond. They fought with the cold efficiency of machines, which made sense since their hive mind processed thousands of variables simultaneously. "Their prediction algorithms are flawless," Thorne continued. "They know where our ships will be before we do. We've tried everything: randomized patterns, AI-assisted navigation, even letting rookies fly by instinct. Nothing works." Sarah walked closer to the display, watching recorded battles. Human fighters exploded in predetermined kill zones, their pilots never standing a chance. The Kriegans had turned space combat into a mathematical equation, and humanity was losing. "What about Ghost Squadron?" she asked. Thorne's expression darkened. 12 of our best pilots. Good people, but broken. They've survived too many defeats. They need someone who can show them a new way to fight." Sarah nodded. She had read the files during transit. Each pilot had exceptional skills, but the constant losses had shattered their confidence. They flew by the book because improvisation meant death against Kriegan targeting systems. "When do I meet them?" "Tomorrow. Tonight, you need to understand what we're really facing." Thorne activated a new display showing Kriegan ship specifications. Their vessels are living organisms, grown rather than built. They think and react faster than any computer we've developed. Their weapons fire where you're going to be, not where you are. Sarah studied the data carefully. The Kriegan ships resembled massive insects, their hulls covered in sensory organs that detected the slightest energy fluctuation. Their weapons were bioplasma cannons that could track targets across multiple dimensions of probability. "They're predicting optimal flight paths," she observed. "Their entire system assumes we'll make logical choices." "Exactly. And that assumption has been correct for 3 years." Sarah smiled for the first time since arriving. "Then it's time to stop being logical." The next morning, Ghost Squadron assembled in Hangar Bay 7. 12 pilots stood at attention, their expressions ranging from skeptical to defeated. Sarah recognized the types: veterans who had seen too much, rookies who had survived by luck, and the walking wounded who flew because they didn't know what else to do. Lieutenant Commander David Park stepped forward. He was Ghost Squadron's acting leader, a pilot who had lost his entire wing at the Battle of Proxima Station. "Captain Chin, we're ready for your inspection." Sarah walked down the line, making eye contact with each pilot. She saw fear, doubt, and resignation. These weren't the warriors humanity needed. Not yet. "At ease," she said finally. "My name is Sarah Chen. Starting today, we're going to learn how to break every rule of space combat you've ever been taught." A pilot named Rodriguez spoke up. "With respect, Captain, we've tried everything. The Kriegans adapt to any pattern we create." "That's because you're still creating patterns," Sarah replied. "Even your attempts at randomness follow a logic they can predict. We need to think differently." She activated a holographic display showing her escape from Kepler-7. Her fighter's path looked insane. Sudden stops, unnecessary spirals, power cuts at critical moments. It defied every principle of efficient spaceflight. "This is how I survived when 200 other pilots died," she said. "I didn't fly randomly. I flew wrong. I made choices that no sane pilot would make because the Kriegan's hive mind couldn't process genuine stupidity. The squadron exchanged glances. Park frowned. You're saying we should deliberately fly badly. I'm saying we should fly human. Make decisions based on emotion, instinct, and sheer bloody-mindedness. The Kriegans analyze everything through logic. They can't predict what doesn't make sense. Over the next week, Sarah transformed Ghost Squadron's training. She had them fly with instruments covered, navigate by feel, and make decisions that horrified the instructors. They learned to embrace inefficiency, to waste fuel on unnecessary maneuvers, to fire weapons at impossible angles. The breakthrough came during a simulation. Rodriguez was being chased by 3 Krigan interceptors. Instead of taking evasive action, he did something insane. He cut all power and let his fighter tumble. The simulated Kriegans overshot, their targeting systems unable to process a ship that had effectively given up. That's it, Sarah shouted. Their algorithms assume we want to survive efficiently. Do something completely stupid, and their whole system stutters. The squadron began to understand. They practiced maneuvers that made no tactical sense. Flying straight at enemy formations, spinning in place, accelerating toward celestial bodies. Each action was designed to create moments of confusion in Kriegan calculations. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station's chief engineer, initially refused Sarah's request to modify the fighters. You want to remove safety protocols. That's insanity. These systems prevent pilots from destroying their own ships. The Kriegans count on those safety systems, Sarah argued. They know exactly what our fighters can and can't do. Remove the limits, and suddenly we have capabilities they haven't calculated for. It took Admiral Thorne's direct intervention, but eventually Vasquez agreed to limited modifications. The fighters' engines could now push 20% beyond normal limits, and weapons could fire during high-G maneuvers that would normally lock them down. 2 weeks into training, long-range sensors detected a Kriegan scout force approaching human space. 3 bioships, each capable of destroying an entire squadron. They were probing humanity's defenses, testing response times. Admiral Thorne called Sarah to the command center. This is it. Your theory gets a real test. But understand, if you fail, we lose our only defensive position in this sector. Sarah looked at the tactical display. The Kriegan ships moved in perfect formation, their approach calculated for maximum efficiency. They expected a standard human response. Fighters launching in defensive formations, following established protocols. Give me Ghost Squadron and permission to engage, she said. You're not ready. You've had 2 weeks of training. Sir, we'll never be ready by their standards. That's the point. Thorne was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. Do it. Show us this new way of fighting. Sarah ran to the hangar bay. Ghost Squadron was already suiting up, their faces showing a mixture of fear and determination. She could see the change in them. They stood straighter, moved with purpose. They were still scared, but now they had hope. Listen up, she announced. This is our moment. Everything we've practiced, every insane maneuver, every rule we've broken, it all leads to this. The Kriegans expect us to fight like soldiers. Today, we fight like humans. She climbed into her modified fighter, feeling the enhanced systems humming with barely contained power. Ghost Squadron, launch sequence initiated. Remember, when in doubt, do something stupid. 12 fighters burst from Nexus Command's hangar bay, their formation deliberately sloppy. Sarah led them toward the approaching Kriegan scouts, her mind racing through the possibilities. This was the test that would determine humanity's survival. The Kriegans would expect optimal attack patterns, coordinated strikes, logical decisions. Instead, they were about to face something their hive mind had never encountered: human chaos. Ghost Squadron. Sarah broadcast as they approached weapons range. Let's show them what happens when humans stop playing by the rules. The revolution in space combat was about to begin. Breaking the pattern. The Krigan scouts detected Ghost Squadron at maximum sensor range. Their bioships adjusted formation with mechanical precision, organic weapons arrays swiveling to track the approaching human fighters. Inside each vessel, the hive mind calculated trajectories, analyzed energy signatures, and predicted exactly where the humans would be in 3.7 seconds. They were wrong. Sarah Chen's fighter suddenly lurched sideways, a maneuver that burned precious fuel for no tactical advantage. Her wingman, Rodriguez, responded by spinning his craft like a pinwheel while accelerating directly toward the nearest Krigan ship. The rest of Ghost Squadron scattered in patterns that defied logic. Their targeting systems are confused, Park reported, voice tight with concentration. I'm reading massive spikes in their calculation processes. Keep them guessing, Sarah ordered. Johnson, cut your engines and drift. Martinez, fly straight at their formation, then pull a bootlegger reverse. Everyone else, remember your training. If it feels wrong, do it. The first Krigan bioplasma bolt lanced through space, missing Martinez by meters. The shot had been perfectly aimed at where she should have been if she'd followed any reasonable evasive pattern. Instead, she had suddenly reverse thrust while barrel rolling, a maneuver that nearly tore her fighter apart. The Krigans recalculated. Their hive mind processed thousands of variables per second, but Ghost Squadron wasn't following variables. They were following instinct, emotion, and sheer human bloody-mindedness. Sarah targeted the lead Krigan scout. Instead of using her targeting computer, she closed her eyes and fired based on feel. The plasma bolts went wide, but the Krigan ship reacted, adjusting position to avoid the seemingly random shots. That movement put it directly in the path of Rodriguez's attack run. Splash one! Rodriguez shouted as his missiles found their mark. The Krigan scout's bio-armor cracked, organic fluids crystallizing in the vacuum of space. The remaining two Krigan ships adapted quickly. Their hive mind recalibrated, accounting for human irrationality. They began firing in wider patterns, creating kill zones that accounted for unpredictable movement. Sarah smiled grimly. The Krigans were learning, but they were still thinking like machines. All ships, execute Chaos Pattern 7. Ghost Squadron had practiced this maneuver in simulation, though half of them had crashed during training. Each fighter began a series of seemingly random movements that, when viewed together, created a pattern within chaos. They flew like a school of fish evading a predator, each pilot reacting to their wingman's movements rather than following a plan. The Krigan targeting systems stuttered. Their hive mind could process individual chaos, but struggled with coordinated chaos. It was like trying to predict the path of smoke in a windstorm. Lieutenant Emily Watson, one of the youngest pilots in Ghost Squadron, had an idea. She had been a street racer before joining the service, and she remembered something about pursuit algorithms. Captain, what if we make them chase us? Sarah immediately understood. All fighters, pick a dance partner, make them follow you, then do something stupid. The battle transformed into a deadly game of chase. Each Ghost Squadron pilot engaged a Krigan fighter in a pursuit pattern, then broke it with impossibly human choices. Park flew straight toward Nexus Command's mass driver array, pulling up at the last second. His Krigan pursuer, expecting a logical escape route, clipped the array and spun out of control. Johnson, running low on fuel, did the unthinkable. She ejected her fighter's emergency supplies, creating a cloud of debris, then hid within it with all systems powered down. When the Krigan ship passed through the cloud, she powered up and fired point-blank into its engine cluster. The battle raged for 20 minutes, an eternity in space combat. Ghost Squadron lost 2 fighters, Williams and Chen, no relation to Sarah, but they destroyed all 3 Krigan scouts. It was humanity's first decisive victory in months. Back at Nexus Command, the debriefing room buzzed with excitement. Admiral Thorne studied the battle recordings with disbelief. You broke every rule in the book. Your fuel consumption was horrific, your formations non-existent, and your targeting accuracy was below Academy standards. And we won, Sarah pointed out. You won, Thorne agreed. More importantly, you've given us something we haven't had in years: hope. The news of Ghost Squadron's victory spread quickly through human space. Military analysts studied the battle footage, trying to codify what Sarah had done. They missed the point entirely. The moment they tried to turn chaos into doctrine, it stopped being chaos. Sarah worked with Dr. Vasquez to further modify the fighters. They removed more safety protocols, installed randomization circuits that could introduce unpredictability into system responses, and added what Vasquez called the insanity switch, a button that would randomly alter engine output and weapons timing. This goes against everything I believe in as an engineer, Vasquez admitted, but I can't argue with results. The Kriegans responded to their scouts' destruction by sending a full battle group, 12 bioships, including a hive carrier, toward Nexus Command. It was a force that could overwhelm the station's defenses through sheer firepower. Thorne smiled. Now we teach the rest of our forces what you've learned. The age of predictable warfare is over. Humans don't fight with logic alone. We fight with passion, creativity, and sometimes beautiful chaos. 6 months later, the war ended not with surrender but with understanding. The Kriegans, faced with human unpredictability, chose cooperation over continued conflict. They had evolved to prize efficiency and order. Humans had shown them that chaos had its own strength. Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of humanity's newest battleship, the Unpredictable, watching as human and Kriegan ships flew in formation. They were learning from each other, the Kriegans teaching precision and coordination, humans teaching flexibility and innovation. Captain, her navigation officer reported, the Kriegan flagship is requesting a joint training exercise. They want to practice what they call controlled chaos. Sarah grinned. Tell them we accept. And remind them, the moment chaos becomes controlled, it stops being chaos. That's the first lesson. The revolution in space combat had not just changed how humanity fought. It had changed how the galaxy understood warfare itself. Order and chaos, logic and instinct, precision and improvisation, all had their place among the stars. And in the vast expanse of space, human pilots continued to do what they did best: the unexpected. Retriclad can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Admiral Thorne assembled all squadron leaders for an emergency briefing. They're coming to finish us. Our conventional forces will engage using standard tactics. Try to wear them down. Ghost Squadron will be our reserve, our wild card. Sarah studied the tactical projections. Even with their new tactics, 12 fighters against a battle group was suicide. She needed something more, something the Kriegans couldn't possibly predict. Sir, I need access to the maintenance drones. All of them. Thorne frowned. Why? Because the Kriegans won't expect us to weaponize our repair equipment. The battle began 3 days later. Human forces engaged the Kriegan battle group at maximum range, following traditional doctrine. The Kriegans advanced steadily, their superior firepower and predictive targeting taking a terrible toll. Human fighters exploded in carefully calculated kill patterns. Sarah watched from the hangar bay. Ghost Squadron held in reserve. She could see the pattern in the Kriegan assault. They were herding human forces into a specific formation, preparing for a decisive strike. Ghost Squadron, prepare for launch. Admiral Thorne's voice crackled over the comm. Captain Chen, whatever you're planning, now would be the time. Sarah smiled. All maintenance drones. Execute swarm protocol. Hundreds of small maintenance drones, normally used for hull repairs and debris clearing, launched from Nexus Command. Sarah had spent the previous day reprogramming them with a single instruction: be annoying. They swarmed toward the Kriegan formation, not attacking, just buzzing around like mosquitoes. The Kriegan hive mind paused. These weren't combat units. They posed no threat, but they were everywhere, cluttering sensor readings, creating false targets, disrupting the mathematical purity of the battlefield. Ghost Squadron, launch. Sarah commanded. Stay low, use the drone swarm for cover. 12 fighters burst from the hangar, diving into the chaos of swarming maintenance drones. The Kriegans tried to target them, but their systems kept locking onto drones instead. The humans were hidden in a cloud of mechanical nonsense. Sarah led her squadron through the swarm, each pilot following their own path. As they cleared the drone cloud, they were already among the Kriegan ships. The enemy had expected an attack from maximum range, not a knife fight at point-blank distance. Pick your targets and trust your instincts, Sarah broadcast. Remember, if you think about it, you're dead. The battle became a melee. Ghost Squadron pilots flew by feel, shooting from the hip, making split-second decisions based on gut instinct rather than tactical analysis. Rodriguez flew his fighter between two Kriegan destroyers, causing them to fire on each other. Park used a maintenance drone as an improvised missile, ramming it into a Kriegan sensor array. Sarah found herself facing the Hive carrier. Its weapons arrays swiveled to track her, calculating firing solutions. She did what no sane pilot would do. She flew straight at it, accelerating beyond all safety limits. Her fighter screamed warnings as structural integrity reached critical levels. At the last second, she fired all weapons while simultaneously ejecting her cockpit module. Her fighter, now an unmanned missile, slammed into the carrier's command node. The explosion rippled through the organic hull as Sarah's ejection pod tumbled through space. The destruction of the command node sent shockwaves through the Kriegan hive mind. For precious seconds, their coordinated responses faltered. Ghost Squadron pressed the advantage, targeting communication arrays and command structures rather than weapon systems. The battle turned. Human conventional forces, seeing the Kriegans' confusion, pressed their attack. What had been an orderly retreat became a counteroffensive. The Kriegan battle group, unable to adapt to the chaos, began to withdraw. As Sarah was recovered by a rescue shuttle, she watched the Kriegan ships retreat. Ghost Squadron had lost 3 more pilots, but they had done the impossible. They had broken the Kriegan battle group's coordinated assault. Back at Nexus Command, the victory celebration was subdued. They had won, but at a terrible cost. Still, they had proven something important. The Kriegans could be beaten if humans embraced their natural capacity for chaos. Admiral Thorne found Sarah in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars. The Kriegans have requested a ceasefire. They want to negotiate. Sarah turned, surprised. They want to talk. Apparently, our tactics have introduced an element they can't calculate for. Their hive mind is designed to find optimal solutions. We've shown them problems that have no optimal solution, only human solutions. What happens now?